Hi there, welcome to the Driven Podcast. My name's Stephen Old. I'm here with Pierre Knouwds, and today we're going to be talking around cloud transformation, consulting, and working out the strategy to migrate to the cloud. As some of you know, if you've been listening to us before, I lead the cloud specialist team at Claranet, and Pierre?
I lead the portfolio team in the hosting business unit that's looking at the products and services we take to market and formulating and structuring them.
Great stuff. Basically keeping me in line with what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, you just sell the right thing.
Yeah. So I think today I wanted to start with what's new. So we've both had a bit of a look around what's new in the market, what AWS, Google and Azure have released, and also a bit of a think around some of the things that have changed, some acquisitions that we both actually picked out, and bits around strategy. So one of the things I jumped out at, mainly because I use it and I've had it very recently in a particular opportunity, AWS SQS, FIFO, all the words, Amazon Web Services, simple queuing service, first in, first out, is available in more regions, 15 new regions. This is very useful for people specifically who need to know that the order that they put something in is the order it comes out. So a lot of people that do e-commerce, they maybe take orders on the website, then want them to fire into the warehouse system or delivery system, whatever it might be. They know that it's going to go in the same order, which without FIFO you don't know, and so you sometimes have to use different technologies. This simplifies that for a lot of people. What did you find? Was anything particularly?
I find Google acquired Illuma, which is a data sort of migration product, and actually quite interesting if you look at, they've acquired Velostrata a while ago, so they're sort of acquiring these migration packages to help migrate infrastructure and data. So it's quite interesting. I think a lot of the cloud providers are starting to do that now.
Absolutely. Velostrata is really interesting because it kind of separates out the data from the migration, so it allows you to actually start using your new target much quicker. I think what's interesting about Illuma, like I say, is that it's database migration, so specifically around that, and it's a very specific technology for that, so it kind of extends that suite out, because data's the pain to move, in our experience. We've had Amazon last month, I want to say, or it might be earlier this month, it was last month, acquired CloudEndure, which were kind of pushing themselves as a data protection organisation, but have migration functionality, and we've used it in the past, and that's a good tool. And obviously they already have some of their own, as do Azure. Azure have had them for quite a long time, they've been focusing on that, so it's a real push. They're trying to get other things to try to make people consume quicker and have an easier life on getting onboarded. The other thing on Google I think we both saw was around GKE and the fact that they're pushing new tools to help you be able to run your Kubernetes clusters anywhere, so even on-prem.
Yeah, that's part of the GCP beta platform.
Exactly, yeah. Which I think is an interesting one. In terms of stuff out of Azure, specifically I saw the app service which allows you to now run, I think it's called Wildfly, which allows you to now run more easily Linux workloads, specifically Java EE apps on Azure. It's a big push for them, being able to, don't think we're just Windows, you can run your Linux workloads here as well. And they've done loads of stuff around data factory, some integration stuff, so you can now integrate GitHub, you can get the functions, Azure functions to step into it as well. So some really cool stuff there. Too much to talk about really here, but well worth going and having a look at what Azure are doing around data factory. Cool. Anything else that you came out that you think of?
No, I think that's about that's the main thing. So.
I could talk about it forever, so it's best to probably stop me. So today we're going to be discussing the consulting framework that Claranet have put in place, which we call Competitive Edge. But really what we want to get out of today is that these are the things that you need to consider and ways of attacking how you actually attack this whole thing. So you've got a CIO, a CEO, someone saying, we're moving to cloud. What on earth do you need to know, and that kind of stuff. So it's for anyone that's at the beginning steps, in my opinion, of a cloud transformation, or someone that's maybe in one and it's not quite going how they'd like, or they're not sure how it's going and would like some sort of validation for that. And they're the kind of things that we'll be talking about. Does that sound?
That sounds fun. I think we've got to be careful. I think if you look at organisations, that where you are in cloud, and this, some people think once I've got my stuff in the cloud, I'm done. I've migrated, and it's not. And I think we've got to also be careful with consulting. I think the one thing I was quite passionate about when we did this consulting framework was to have it modular, have it in different modules and phases. So irrespective of where you are, how mature you are, or how evolved that your cloud migration is, we could have something that could do a specific task for you.
Yeah.
And instead of having a large consulting framework, which is lots of days, you can have, okay, well, I just want to do this now, or I just want to do that now, or I'm ready to do this now. Because I think organizations, why they would do something like this, sort of, you've got to be careful not to rush people. You've got to allow them to make the decisions. You've got to allow them to speak to the investors. Yes, that's the right thing to do. And I think that's where a competitive edge is quite nice, where you can do when you want, specifically to the task at hand.
You brought something up earlier when we were having a chat, which I hadn't really considered. I always have it in my head because it's kind of my job that absolutely cloud journeys continue and they don't stop at adopt. But you had a really good graphic up that kind of pointed out that people can do, I can't remember the names of them all, but it's like explore,
Explore, decide,
adopt.
Yeah.
And that's where people think it stops.
Yeah, once you're in the cloud, I'm there.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've done it. I've got a framework or whatever. But really, it's about your next stages, which is where you really start making your benefits, which is your optimize, your FinOps piece. Is those kind of pieces. It's the carrying on the journey, expanding to take on more services and that kind of thing, where you start seeing your benefits. And that's what I quite like about this. It doesn't stop when you're on the cloud. There are still modules and pieces that will continue to improve what you're doing.
If you look at the sort of the things I've got on my graph are sort of as expand.
Mm-hmm.
You there, I'm working at this now. I'm starting to get comfortable around running in the cloud. I want to start putting more stuff out of the data center and more into that. So you start expanding what you do, or your business growing. You say, actually, I need to scale this a bit. The other bit is sort of, I'm done here. Actually, can I start optimizing? Do I really need that SQL cluster, which is still running on operating systems? Why can't I use a PaaS service or something like that? So it's part of that. And the next bit is, once you're done there, let's evolve this, trying to make this more intelligent. Can we put a bit more automation in there? Can we start, starting to use new services? We, instead of running an application, could we run a function or container or something like that? So it's that whole thing, we're there. How can we make this better? And I don't think it ever stops.
Why did we create competitive edge? What gaps did we see that were there? And for me, because it's actually been a real iteration on some of the stuff we did initially. So for me, we had people that didn't know where they were. They didn't know what apps they have. They didn't know who used them. They didn't know what they were sat on. And that's a real danger zone for being able to do a migration. So what we initially built out was all around helping us with purely a transformation of a set amount of things to move. And that's where it started in my time in Claranet. But it's really expanded since you've joined and you've really moved it on. So what other gaps were there that we've then answered with
I think we can't forget what's in the data center. And actually people, as you look at CMDBs and you look at what people have got in the asset register, and they're not there. Yeah. So the gap that came in, we actually
huge gaps,
we've got a module in there. We actually go and physically walk a data center and go and take what you've got, all your assets, and then compare it with your asset register. And then we've got to use our in-house tool, Clarity, which we can then do and go logical discovery, actually. Do logical discovery of the logical estate and actually see, did we miss anything between the physical order, what's in the asset register, and actually what's logically in the IT estate. So that's adding that bit in there. And I think part of, then we've got the migration bit, which sort of we as Claranet, you always used to do quite well.
That was what our focus always was, right? Yeah.
Which is around that analysis and capturing data and stuff like that. The other bit that was quite, that we added in was, you've got all these assets, going to the cloud, it's looking at the cost of change. It's helping a customer with that business case. I've got to go to my investors, I've got to go to my senior management and say, well, you want me to get out of the data center, we've got all these assets, we've got all these contractual obligations, which we can't forget. If we move to the cloud now, we've got another year left on the maintenance contract on this large estate. We've got here, how do we do with that? And actually we help with sort of looking at that contractual liability, what you have to get out of the way before you can migrate, and the best way to do that.
That was one of the things that really stood out. Me being a prideful person, when we had the acquisition of Union and we had this competitive edge, I was thinking, well, what does it do that what I've designed doesn't do? And then they kind of said, well, one of the key things about building a business case, which is what this is all about, helping people to build a business case for whatever it might be, and it can be different things. It doesn't have to be to move to public cloud, right? It can be around changing your storage platform, whatever it can be. is the cost of doing nothing. And I hadn't even thought about that initially. You know, the maintenance liabilities, the fact that you've just sunk thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds into kit, and so you need to sweat those assets and bits like that. And that's what things like the data center audit allowed you to do. You actually get the real idea of what's there, what's new, what's old. You compare that to the contracts and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff, and it gives you a real complete picture if you need it. Some companies and some organisations have some understanding of those pieces, so they know what liabilities they've got and all that kind of thing. But for those that don't, there's a module for it, right? And that's the great thing about it. It's broken down into 4 categories, right?
Yeah, it's got 4 sort of phases.
Yeah.
Which is a sort of, the first bit is discover, the next bit is analyse, then it's architect, and then the last bit is mobilise. We might change the name of that one, but it's basically, once you've done everything, let's move to the cloud. And they then broken down, those 4 phases got different modules in each of them, and they sort of, that module is modules aligned to that phase. If it's a discovery module, it's part of discovery and analysis, and if it's a design module, it would sit in the architect module, and then the business case bit is part of that last mobilise bit where we actually go and do that.
We've talked around maintenance liabilities, which I think is in Discover as well. But I think there's 6 in Discover, right?
Yeah, I was going to quickly go through it.
Yeah,
so if you look at discovery, we've called the data center audit, which is sort of the physical walkthrough of the data center and collecting the stuff where we sort of do the physical audit of what's there and compare it to the asset register. And also, one important thing about all of these modules is actually you get something at the end of it. It's either a data file and a report, or a data file or the report, or we do a workshop for you. So there's always a deliverable or asset you get after. We've done a module. The discovery module is sort of, we've got the data center audit, then we've got an infrastructure audit, which is sort of, the data center audit is a physical audit, the infrastructure audit is more of a logical audit where we use the Clarity tool. Then we look at storage and data protection.
Yeah,
sort of making sure
that's one I always forget, and is so important that you don't forget.
And we talked about data, how important data is to making sure you've got your data.
That's the hardest piece to move, and it's the highest risk piece to move generally as well.
And this bit you cover about the application stack and discovery dependency mapping. It's actually mapping that physical assets to the logical assets, then to the applications and the storage, and how they all sort of hang together and how they depend on one another. And you need to understand that.
This one feeds into because we're doing this with someone at the moment where they've got a load of co-locations, they've got a load of kit, and they want to know how much of that kit they can get rid of. Yeah. And how much of it they're going to move, and start planning that out. And until you do that, and so few people actually have it, because you get to the point with virtualization where people kind of go, we know it's on some of this. Yeah. And actually being able to plug it down is much harder. But then it becomes so much harder to then write your business case because you don't know how much of the stuff you can switch off.
It's also, if you look further than that, if I go to the cloud, actually, what type of storage am I going to apply? Do I need the high performance? Can I just use object or something like that? So it's quite important understanding where your data sits and what data you've got.
Unstructured data, for me, so if you look at the inhibitors to change, and there's a Driven article that is just coming out that is around the inhibitors to change, and one is around unstructured and structured data. And I work with a number of construction companies and engineering companies who have masses of this stuff. Terabytes and terabytes, petabytes in some instances, where they've got all the design files or whatever it might be, but people need to be able to access them from anywhere, anytime, and it's just in a file structure. That is really a big challenge for people, because you've got to protect that data, you've got to make it accessible, and those kind of bits. And people... We said at the beginning of the engagement with both of these businesses, this is going to be the crux of the problem. We can't shy away from it. You can't leave it till last because you don't want to deal with it, because this is the bit that will make your journey, just expand in terms of time and just carry on lagging and until infinity. What's the next module? Is it the liability one?
Yeah, it's a maintenance, liability, and contractual alignment. We'll actually look at the contract, see what you've got, see what liabilities you've got there, what your contractual obligations.
What I think this builds on, and it's something that I think I've spoken about previously, but when people kind of say, what are the inhibitors to change, it's generally culture and then governance are the 2 big ones. If people say, what are your top 2? Getting people on board to be willing to change, and bringing people like finance into the journey as early as possible, helping them understand the implications of what's happening, how it's going to change. This module addresses some of that, and I think it's absolutely critical, because it can really become a blocker where you get, quite rightly, people turning around and saying, I don't know what we're going to be spending here. Can you tell me? And that's just as you're about to deploy into cloud, because people haven't thought about that early enough. And why are we doing this? Can you give me a real business case with proper costings? And that's why this module, I think, is one of the most important for people that have their own on-prem equipment.
Yeah, and there's an example where organisation got a new deal with a new vendor on software, and the software was like 30% cheaper than what they were currently paying. But when finance got involved and they actually look at the amount of hardware assets they have to write down, and the cost of change they would have, that just from a business perspective, actually it didn't stack up. So it's quite amazing. And so I've always had a saying, projects or large transitions doesn't fail for technical reasons, it's failed for business reasons.
Yeah.
And it's quite important to have that bit in there.
Cracking. So we've discovered everything. We know everything about our business, but we've just got the raw data, right?
Yep.
What's next?
So the next thing is sort of, and why we would do this next phase is basically, you've got to make an informed decision. And it's going to analyse the data you've got there. Therefore, the next module is called Analyse. No surprise there. Sort of to have a look at, what the data we've captured on the first one, and then basically, bring that into competitive edge. So we've got the service analysis, which sort of is the 6 R's, which is one of the modules. We sort of look at all the applications. And the next bit is the candidate platform analysis to look what workloads. And another one is the business performance analysis. So you've got the business performance analysis, the service analysis, and the platform analysis, basically. So looking, all the data we've gathered during the discovery phase and bringing that into the analyze phase and have a look at there.
So these are the ones I've got the most experience with.
Yeah.
These are most like the things we were doing before.
Yeah.
So I think the 6 R's one's really interesting. We're working with businesses at the moment where they've got hundreds of applications, and you need to get under the skin of all of them and understand how they're being used as well, to then be able to tell people what you do. So for those that don't know the 6 R's, it was an Amazon term that has been basically adopted by most of the industry to rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, or retain. You were looking at me as if I was going to miss one there. I got them. I used to always forget repurchase. And so you should be able to realistically, if you know enough about an application, and we actually ask an application questions, that's how we do it. We have a tool that we do, that we've built ourselves on how to do this. But you should therefore be able to define which of those paths an application falls under. So we do that a lot, and it's very beneficial to be able to really understand how long it's going to take you, why you're doing it, and what cost benefits you're going to get out of it.
So the next phase is sort of what you call the architect, you call it design or whatever you want. They've got 4 modules, and my notes keep on bringing up the wrong one on the first one. So
yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, you've done very well to remember the correct one, because we seem to be doing a lot of data center audits.
yeah. So I think this is sort of looking at the service assessment. Look at your services, how they map, how they perform. And how they're all connected as part of the design, and we sort of, that provides a model to map the platform services and the business services onto the new platform, because you've done your platform analysis. So this is what it's going to look like. So it's mapping that. Then we do a platform cost modeling module, which sort of this is actually what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And this is where you
go.
go.
That we're agnostic as to cloud for that one again, right? We can actually tell you what it would cost to do a split of this, and that here and here, right?
Yeah, no, it might be that it's cheaper to keep it where it is.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be.
Can be. Yeah. I've got one of those right now, where someone said, "Oh, I want to move this," and I went, "We can look at it," and I've done it, and it was going to be something like £300,000 a month for the service they need, which they already own.
Yeah.
And so the business case just doesn't stack up, right?
Yeah, again, the business reasons, yeah.
And that's what all this feeds into, right? The architect phase is high-level plan and design.
High-level design, so it's sort of doing a sort of logical design. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to put this there. We're going to put that there. And quite important, this is sort of, we don't want to do one large thing. It's more specific to that workload. For the piece of work we're doing, if you want to move your ERP application, you want to move your e-commerce application, it's looking at that piece specifically.
Yeah.
So to make sure we get data for there, and then we'll help you. The last bit is helping you with the business case, actually.
Yeah,
it's sort of we've looked at what you've got on the platform. We sort of done the platform cost analysis. We sort of looked at the high-level design. We've made the design in that, and actually, this is what's going to cost you, and this is the business case. This is where you're going to. This is what it costs you, and this is where the benefits come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that helps, a CIO or IT decision maker to go to the business decision makers and saying, well, you wanted me to go to cloud, or we have to go to cloud because of whatever reason. Yeah. This is the impact, the cost impact on the bottom line of doing
the benefits, that. The risks. The risks people, kind of want to pretend they don't exist, but they absolutely do. You've still, with any migration, you've got to consider the risks.
Yeah.
And I think they absolutely get that out of this. Cool.
And then we're on to the final module, which is sort of the mobilise bit, and this is sort of where we actually we start doing the stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll do a statement of work and actually tell you this is what we're going to do, this is the modules we're doing,
Yeah.
And what we're delivering as part of that. And
exactly, set deliverables. And this can even be actually writing out an SOW for people to work internally as well. We have very much a mentality within Claranet of this is something we do with you, not to you.
Yeah.
So the one I'm working on at the moment, I've done the high-level plan, the tranche plan, working out what we're going to move when. But I've worked with them to basically plan out how much time it will take from different roles. And some of that's us.
Yeah.
But a good chunk of it's from their organisation because it needs to be.
Yeah.
Their SAs are absolutely critical to this. Our cloud architects can absolutely get involved, but we'll need some of their engineers that are used to working it day in, day out. Their project management team who are used to working their way. So it's very much around building out a statement of works that works for everyone and also gives them an understanding of what is needed to be delivered on both sides, whether they work with us or otherwise.
Yeah, so, and everybody knowing where they stand, knowing what they've got to deliver is quite important.
Yeah.
The next bit's around the low-level design. More of architects is doing, a bit more detail around what we do. And again, this is specific to whatever we're doing for that specific work stream, because there is a lot of detail in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it is workload by workload. Yeah. That's absolutely critical. Yeah. Because you've got to break out transformation into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
You can't just throw it all across and hope for the best. That's where you're going to again get stuck in that rut of adopt and having had the lift and shift and paying a fortune for it because you've not optimized it.
Last bit's the migration. Basically, once we've sort of and everybody knows
what
they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a plan. We've got a design to what we're doing. It's sort of the migration and basically part of that is we start with a project workshop. We do a workload test plan and we do a migration plan and say that this is how we're going to move you, everybody on board and give you the timelines and we then adopt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I kind of look back at it, I kind of think how has it improved what we do and how has it improved customer experience having this framework. I think you've kind of called out it, but the modularity of it. The fact that you can pick and choose the pieces that you need, that you don't pay for stuff that you don't need, that you don't have time wasted on stuff you don't need, and that you can just do one bit if you want to.
Yeah.
I think that's a real improvement on what we previously did, and is of real benefit to customers.
No, definitely feel so. If I was an organisation and I've got a very up to date, CMDB, and I've got my asset register, and I know exactly what I've got, and I actually know that discovery bit. I've got all that information. I've got that. I just don't know what to do with that information. Yeah. Why would I ask you to go and do that information again? And we are flexible enough. We say, look, this is the information you want. Have you got it? If you've got it and we're happy with that, we'll take that and we'll analyse that. And there's that modularity of it. And it could be that someone has done all the planning. They just want a safe pair of hands to actually go and do the migration for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one specific case I remember where the customer said, we've done the service mapping, so we know what services we have, but we just need you to tell us what VM, where they sit on the infrastructure side. And so it's a matter of, okay, well, that actually takes this many days off what we were going to do in the old world, but we'll put all of it in front of you, and then if you've got that information, we won't do that piece of work. Now it's far easier because it's just, don't need that module, this one, don't worry, I'll feed into that. But what's nice is it can still feed into your next analyse stage or your next plan stage, and you can work with the customer, with the organisation to take that information and put it into their business case still. So it doesn't all have to have been from Claranet to do that. So I think it's improved. That's one of the key improvements. I think the tooling's really improved. The presentation layer's improved. I think the fact that we're using suitable forms for suitable pieces. So whether it be Power BI, whether it be presentation, whether it be a document. depending on what the customer needs and what they're trying to do. I think the amount of data you get out of discover phase doesn't make sense to always be in a report, right? Because there is just masses and masses of data that come out of it if it's done well and if it's worked. And I think that's something that's really improved as well, because it's very clear what people get from each module.
Yeah, it is. We've got the deliverables, they clearly define. The customer knows what they're getting. They know what they sign up at the beginning. And it's not like the old consultancy, it's just a bunch of days that keeps on running. And, I look back after, I've spent 20 days with you, what do I get for it?
Yeah.
This is what we do for you. We have to do the next day to get the benefit, and it's not like that. These are modulars. Each of the modules have got a deliverable, and a customer know what they get.
And I think it also makes it very easy to understand the amount of time it will take, because you know what you're getting out, you therefore know what you need to feed in, and therefore you can make a far better estimate, I suppose, of required time, which I think has always been a challenge in consultancy. When I look at it, and having hired consultants in previous roles myself, I've looked at it and kind of gone, well, you've told me it's 100 days.
Yeah.
But how do you know it's 100 days? As with any T&M stuff, right? Any professional services. But being able to turn around and say, you get this is what we have to do to get you there, here's a breakdown of how we do the time. I think that's really valuable and opens trust. And when you look at Claranet's aim to be the most trusted managed service provider in Europe and Brazil, and now a bit of America, and now a bit of Australia, and a bit of India, it's really important to be able to demonstrate this is how we think we're going to spend our time.
And that's at work with you, and we transparent. This is what we're doing. This is what you're getting. If you want more, let us know. But customers know what they get, and I think, I had a previous CEO who said, and if we just do what we say we're going to do, we're going to have happy customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the difficult bit is if you get it to organisations that doesn't really know what they want,
what they're trying to do. Yeah.
And then there it gets tricky, because it's actually where are we going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's got to be a goal. As with any transformation, I talk about this with data. There's absolutely no point having all the data in the world if you don't know what you want to do with it, and you will get stuck if you don't have an understanding of what you want to try to do with it. And it's the same idea here. We call it information paralysis internally. But if you don't have the question that you want to ask the data is not valuable until you start getting that insight out of it. I think it's very much the same thing. So yeah, that's a great point, that it can really work for any size.
Yeah, and to me, it's data driven. We've got the data. It's data that comes out of your organisation or the client customer's organisation, and we sort of, we analyse that, and we come out and say, well, we think you need to do that. We think you need to do that, and the customer can decide, well, I want to move forward with the next bit, or I don't want to move forward to the next bit. And I think it's very adaptable. It's very flexible. I
remember going into a power company actually, and we did the application process map, which comes out of one of the modules, and we managed to do a great deal of it because it was still a relatively small company within one workshop, and we were able to draw out the initial piece of it. And they said, we've been trying to do this for 3 years. We just have, but having someone else come in and do it, having someone with fresh eyes, someone that's seen these kind of things more often, makes all the difference, because you can be too stuck in the weeds to analyse at times, I think, if you don't have that external step. Yeah,
and I think if it comes back to, how did we get to competitive edge? We took the best of the bit we did in the Claranet PCP practice, the public cloud practice, and we took what Union have been doing good at, and we've combined the two, and we sort of compared notes and said, you're better at that than I am, we're better at this, and we've come up with something that, is really flexible, is modular, and actually everybody knows what they're getting out of it.
I found that very interesting and a lot to chat about, and I mean, you can chat forever, so eventually we're going to have to end. So I think I'd like to thank you for your time, Pierre. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and for the detailed knowledge of what you've got. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate that.